Okay. Let's talk about it. So the world came to a collective halt this week because I'm coping. I'm coping and I I know many of you are concerned about how I'm feeling about it, how I'm dealing with it, and I'm dealing with it in my own way. It was a little overwhelming. I kind of thought that I had a chance, but um, you know, it just kind of wasn't to be. And it's one of those things where like you just have to learn to be happy for them and try to find some level of happiness. I mean, when I'm obviously very happy in my relationship, but um there's always that what if. There's always the what if. What if the stars aligned? And so, I'm doing okay with it. It's a lot of grieving, so I think I'm in the I moved through denial pretty quickly. Anger for a little bit. Um, Not a lot of bargaining, because I mean, realistically, but so I think I'm sitting pretty firmly in the depression stage. So, you know, as a little boy, you dream of the fairy tale, and I'll have to just create my fairy tale some other way. I mean, I just really thought that I had a chance with Travis, but I'm happy for Taylor, but I always thought it would be me ending up with him. Um, it's not to be. Let's talk about rapport building. So the relationship. This is, if nothing else, when we talk about how to do effective counseling, how to get an effective diagnosis, how or an accurate diagnosis that then leads into an effective treatment plan. Um, this is by far the number one thing that you really want to focus on. Okay. I will get, obviously, through the course of this class, you'll learn diagnosis. We talked about that last week. We'll learn about treatment planning. We'll learn about all these different modalities. But the relationship dynamic that you share with your patient, client, whatever, is the number one thing that is going to make an impact on whether or not what you're doing works. Okay. So the relationship dynamic that you share with your patient, client, consumer is called rapport. Okay. By definition and best practice, the rapport that you build works best if there is harmony. Okay. In other words, as with any relationship that we have, it's based on mutual respect, trust, safety, security. Okay. And that rapport allows the space for therapeutic change to happen. Okay. Think about the friendships, your close relationships, any of that stuff. Like it tends to work best when you feel safe, right? It tends to work best when you feel secure. Now, how is that built, right? That is built through the dynamic that you have as you interact with this person over time. Okay. And that is through sort of like, first of all, how are you showing up to the space, right? What vibe are they getting off of you, right? And then also, like, how are you responding to the things that they say, the words that they choose, how they open up or choose not to open up about the things going on in their life, right? How do you notice, how they're responding? That is such a huge part of this whole thing. Okay? So let me give you an example. I may have shared this with you before, but I do these lectures so much, I don't know what I've said and what I haven't. So I was like 22, 21, 22, and I was still very early into this, but I did a rotation at an inpatient psychiatric unit that had a section for substance use, chemical dependency wing, and there was a person who youngish girl who, it was kind of like she was in and out and in and out and in and out. And the therapist that I was shadowing had familiarity with her and had seen her multiple times. And so when she came back in for intake, naturally she just went right back to that same therapist. And she is kind of going through a little bit of withdrawal. And not in a great space to have a conversation with. But she had been in there frequently. And so they started kind of talking, and she was giving all of the nonverbals of like, bruh, I'm not about that life right now. Like, just kind of, I need to chill. I need to relax. I need to kind of get settled. And the therapist said, well, the only way that you're going to get better is if you talk about your trauma. And as a baby therapist, I'm like, I know that I don't know much at that point, but I knew enough to know that, like, that's not okay to say that. And especially giving all of the nonverbals that she was giving of like, look, I'm not in a good place. And so when she came out and said that, like, it immediately shut everything down. And my clinical or early, very formative clinical brain was screaming, like, what are you doing? But it framing that just completely ended any chance of anything happening in that session, right? And that's so important because she's hitting her right from jump. Maybe she's true. Maybe that's true. And the therapist is like, I mean, honestly, working through our trauma and somebody working through what they got going on, that's a big deal. But maybe not in that space in that moment, right? Maybe that could have come at a different place, or maybe that there could have been another way that one could have framed that. So being able to meet a patient where they're at, develop that clinical rapport, and build that trust and that security and that safety to be like, I'm allowed to open up about these things and it's okay. I feel safe and protected in this space. That opens the door and opens the window for so much good clinical work. Okay. Those of you that are in recovery, this is a good space for you to kind of check with yourself here. Okay. Again, there is no, so I mentioned before that there is no standard for what a sponsor is supposed to be. Okay. Um, like some sponsors can be really open-minded, others can be very like, you need to do it this way. So there's no sort of like standard for what we're supposed to be, but like, or for what somebody that's sponsoring is supposed to be. And so what happens is that somebody comes into recovery newly, and a sponsor like jumps into the space and it's like, okay, you need to do 12-step meetings every day. You need to do a 90 and 90. You need to do a journal. You need to do da-da. You need to do da-da, 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 da-da. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Because like building that rapport is not necessarily as important as we have to just jump in and start the work. Okay. Now that works in that space sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes that works in that space. But when you move from doing that into doing more peer support work, or doing more case management work, or even going and being a full-on therapist, that may not be as effective. And in fact, may actually shut down the clinical processing because I have seen that happen, that people that are peer support echo what they've done out in their recovery work in the community. And those are two different settings and two different things. So I've seen peer supports that are sponsors on the outside, or that have gone through that process for themselves, and that was the thing that worked for them out there. So they bring that here into the clinical space and find they get real, like it doesn't work as well. And it's like, well, why isn't this working? This worked out here because it's not the same. We're in it where it's a different thing, right? Here, there's a clinical space that we need to open up and build rapport first to develop trust because there's so many more boundaries and different things that are going on that isn't necessarily present outside of that space. Okay. Now, the stuff you learn here can work out there, but it's a different thing. Some people are looking to come in and have somebody kind of tell them what to do on the outside, which is fine. That's where they're at. And honestly, as a therapist, I've seen that happen a lot in my clinical practice, that patients get really frustrated that I'm not telling them what to do. That's not what I do as a therapist. I don't tell someone what to do. I don't give advice. I don't give like, okay, you need to do X, Y, and Z. Right? We're trying to strengthen them from the inside so that they're rebuilding a new structure on how to be more resilient and find independence and all of the words, right? I'm not necessarily saying you need to do a 90 and 90 kind of thing. Again, I'm not, by the way, if you don't know what a 90 and 90 is, 90 meetings in 90 days. I'm saying that I'm not saying that doesn't work. Or that can't be effective. I am saying though that like I don't come in and like start prescribing treatment to somebody when they come in and are saying why okay, so I think I've made my point. Let's move on. And if you don't believe me, I mean, our AI overlords say the same thing. The therapeutic alliance is the most important factor in treatment success, right? Because I have to develop that trust with my provider such that I can feel safe and secure and build and feel open and feel comfortable and feel free and really be allowed to explore what some of these things are, right? That's one of the things that I do say to my patients when I meet with them for the first time and do my preamble that I have to give to them, suicide and confidentiality and privacy and background on me. I also say, be you, right? You don't have to put on a show for me. If you just want to come in here for an hour and just scream and say, fuck that shit, and that makes you feel better, I'm all the way here for it, right? I try to do that to have them like let their guard down a little bit and feel free and like know that however they present in treatment is welcome and loved and success. Like we want them to feel that, right? Whether they do or not is up to them, but we want to give them that space. Whatever you bring to the table is going to be accepted, right? It's the difference between, so like if a patient comes to me and says, I'm really thinking about using, well, no, you can't think that. You need to, okay, what does that look like for you? Non-judgmental, right? I'm really having triggers right now. Okay, let's talk about that. It's perfectly natural to have triggers. Let's just talk about what's going on. What triggered it? What are you going to do about it? Blah, blah, blah. As opposed to, oh, trigger, that's a danger sign. You need to go do it. Whoa, 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 whoa. Now I'm shut down. Okay. Now, the other thing that we have to keep in mind is we have to have what's called unconditional positive regard. Okay. And that term, when we say Rogerian therapy, or if you've ever heard that term before, that comes from Carl Rogers. Okay. Humanistic psychology. Okay. I'm going to read the definition, then I'll unpack it. So unconditional positive regard. A general definition is that the attitude of complete acceptance and love, whether for yourself or someone else. When you have unconditional positive regard for someone, nothing they can do could give you a reason to stop seeing them as inherently human and inherently lovable. It does not mean that you accept each and every action that they take by the person, but that you accept who they are at a level much deeper than surface behavior. So give an example. Whenever a patient that was on their recovery journey would meet with me and they would say, I would look at their drug screen and I would see that they had used, or that it was present for the positive for the present of whatever substance. And they wouldn't tell me. one of the tendencies is to say you used, and I even kind of slipped up and just said that they had used. You used. Well, maybe they didn't, or maybe they did. But what difference does it make? Well, we've got to be accountable and hold them. No. This is not my recovery journey to carry. Okay? Now, that may seem counterintuitive, but we're also looking to say, how do we build a therapeutic alliance with someone? Well, in order to build a therapeutic alliance with someone, we have to accept them fully for wherever they're at. Okay? So the way in which it's almost like, and I think I mentioned this later. I think it's on the next slide, actually. Yeah. So it's the kind of caring that the client-centered therapist desires to achieve is a gullible caring in which clients are accepted as they say that they are, not with a lurking suspicion in the therapist's mind that they may in fact be otherwise. This attitude is not stupidity on the therapist's part. It's the kind of attitude that is most likely to lead to trust. Okay. So let's play with this a little bit. I'm going to move my head. The last time I did this and moved my head, it didn't actually move when I went back and edited. So it may not be there, or my head may still be anyway, I want to move it into this space. I hope it is. But anyway, if it's not, that's fine too. I'll read it. So let's talk about Snow White. Okay. So Snow White, moved in with 7 strangers that she met in a forest. Now, probably not the best life decision. I don't know if 7 little people ran into me in the forest and said, "Hey, come live with us in our little house." I don't know that I would do that. It would be kind of awesome, but I don't know that I would do that. And then a stranger who looks kind of sus offered her a apple, and she just said, "Okay, I'm hungry. I'll eat it." Now, I know Halloween is coming up. If a sus looking stranger in a witch's outfit shows up and hands you an apple, are you going to, 1, take it, and 2, eat it? Let's say you may take it just to be kind. Are you going to eat it? Okay. So, couple of decisions, not the best. We can just say, not the best. But if she's coming into therapy and saying, I just made these decisions, and I just moved in with these 7 guys. One of them sleeps a lot. One of them's kind of dumb. One of them is hiding a lot. There's one guy that just sneezes. I don't know if he's got allergies. I don't know what's going on. And then this woman that I just met on the street just handed me an apple, and I just ate it, and now I'm poisoned. Right? As a not just as a therapist, but as a person, there's probably look, what are you doing? Right? But if we do that, what we're doing is we're shaming, right? And listen, completely justified. Snow, what are you doing? Right? What are we actually doing? That is that comes off as kind of shamey, right? And so if you're looking to get her to open up more and talk about how she really feels, you're cutting things off before they even get a chance to get started. Okay? So, wow. You have a really a great capacity to trust others. How wonderful must that be to be able to trust others? So you're really trusting. Tell me more about that. Are there other times where you have trusted people, and how did that work out for you? Tell me more about that. Okay. So going back to my thing about someone using or their drug screen. So when someone would come in and I would look at their drug screen and see that it was positive for the presence of whatever, I would simply reflect it back in that way. I would say, can I bring something up to you just real quick? I was just looking at your drug screen and I noticed that it was positive for the presence of insert substance. Does that, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what does that sound like to you? Now, maybe they lie to me. Okay. But, and this is also, let me just, come here, just me and you. Come here. I'm going to move the microphone because it has a tendency to like go offline. Okay. But just me and you talking. Okay. Here's a secret. Okay. Are you sitting down? Patients are going to lie to you. Patients are going to lie to you. Just between us, don't tell anybody. Okay. All right. You good? All right, good. So it's okay. Okay. Sorry about that. Patients are going to lie to you. That's okay. They're allowed to. They're allowed to lie to you. And don't take offense to that, because that's going to happen. Even for as great of a rapport as you may build with someone, they will lie to you, right? And it's not about you, okay? It's where they're at. Something inside of them, their ego mainly, but something inside of them needs to be protected in that space. And that is a safety tool for them. Like, that is how they are keeping themselves safe, right? Those of you that are in recovery, okay? Like, before you were able, like, there were probably moments where you were like, I probably need to stop. And it was really, really hard. And there would be people, especially if there was a reoccurrence of use, there'd be people in your life going, you're probably and you're probably like, in the back of your mind going, no, I'm good, I've got this. But in the back of your mind going, yeah, but I can't. Like, it isn't something that's malicious. It's the lies that we tell ourselves to keep ourselves from having to make change, because change is hard, right? And I singled out people in recovery, but think about any of you that have tried to do a behavior change. Have you tried to go on a diet recently, right? What's the hardest part about that, right? I don't need that chocolate cake, but it looks really good and I want to feel good. And that, you see what I'm saying? Like, we all have our stuff. It's human, right? Our belt notches are just a little, like, our belt notches are going out just a little bit more and more and more. And this is not a shame about weight. This is more about, like, this is the reality of what's going on. We're allowed to show up. Weight doesn't mean anything, but if you've tried to make any kind of behavior change, how hard is it? It's hard to commit to change. It's hard. And not only is it hard for us to commit to change from our own self, but it's hard to then be in front of somebody else that's in charge of our care and go, yeah, I'm struggling. That's hard. That's really hard. And so meeting someone in that space, not to shame them for it being hard, but to meet them with love and comfort and grace. Like, listen, I get it. It's okay. You're accepted here. Okay. There was a return to use. Something came up to where you needed to feel safe, and your drug of choice helped you to feel safe. That's okay. Right? We're not condoning it. Like, yeah, go do that again. But we understand it, and we meet them in that space with a sort of a gullible caring, like, really, tell me more about that. Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that. Man, that was rough. Kind of, let's walk through what happened. Meeting them in that space, not, you knew better. You need to go do a 90 for 90. You're not in your recovery. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Like, that's not helping. That's not helpful. Okay? I think I've made my point, or at least I hope I have. If I haven't, well, we'll just keep going until all right. So here are some strategies for rapport building. Okay. People love when you notice something about them. Hey, have you, oh man, I love your hair. Or, oh my God, I love that bag. Where did you get it? And that you connect with them as a human first, and then you can work into some of this other stuff. All right. Understanding that initially people are going to be resistant to what's going on. So rolling with that resistance, being okay if they're not fully ready to be open and vulnerable with you. It's not personal against you. That is them protecting themselves. Okay. Nodding, right? Affirming. We'll talk about affirmations next, actually. Restating what they're saying. Potentially reframing to where they feel heard. That's the one big thing that people want, is to feel heard more than anything. Okay. A session should be 80% them, 20% you. You do not have to talk, right? As much. Making sure that you are using open ended questions, which are questions that cannot be answered using yes or no, right? Um, can open up somebody talking, right? Some would say 90% them, 10% you, that you really just get out of the way and let them kind of go because the session is ultimately for them. Trying to use humor. Obviously, I try to use it here in these sessions to try to make them a little more engaging. Well, patients like that in therapy as well, right? Like if you can find some sort of like human connected humor or just humor for yourself, like being able to really try to lighten up the session to where they feel more comfortable. We tend to feel more comfortable around people who we can laugh with and feel connected to in that way. So having a good sense of humor about it, finding common ground or areas where you can meet and have, human connection, as I said, finding the human part of this, and then having a good awareness of self. Okay, having a good awareness of who you are, what you're doing, what you're feeling, what you're bringing to the space, how you're coming off. Good self-awareness can be helpful. But the biggest component of that is validation. Okay. Um, there's going to be a link on the canvas called It's Not About the Nail. All right. I want you to pause here, go watch that, and then come back. Or you can finish this and go. But make sure you watch it because this is what I'm talking about. Okay. People love validation. And if there's a percentage of what I do most in therapy or what we do most as therapists, validating where someone is at is a huge part of what we're doing and can help to build rapport. People love that. So one of the things that you don't want to do is co-sign someone's bullshit, but also you want to meet them in that space and give understanding to why they made the decisions that they made. Okay. Because validating a person's experience without judgment is a key to building a healthy rapport. Okay. Being able to affirm there's a sneeze coming. Being able to affirm their experience strengthens that relationship and shows alignment. I'm in this space with you. I see you where you're at. Even though I can recognize where this might be the problem, I can understand your decision making in this space and let me validate where you're at in this moment and in this time. Okay? People love validation, right? And we can validate them while then subtly opening up all their other alternatives, right? I can understand where the desire to drink was just so strong that you felt. Were there other decisions that you could have made in that moment? And if so, what were they? So I've validated you and then I've kind of subtly shifted, right? So I understand why you made that decision and we can see what the consequences kind of were of that, right? We can meet in that space. If we could do something differently in the future, what would you do? Oh, okay. Well, right. So you say that your goal initially is to try to work away from this, yet you kind of had this. So how does that kind of work? What do we do with that? Right. Some motivational interviewing. Right. So I'm going to affirm where you're at, regardless of if I agree with it or not. It's not my space to. What do we do with that information? Okay. So here are some things. Ors, I talked about open-ended questions. So these are questions that cannot be answered with yes or no, right? So you decided to drink. Would you do that again? Well, yes, no, and then things stop, right? So you decided to drink. If that were to happen again, what other decisions would you make? What are some other ways of looking at that? How would have approaching it changed had you done something different? Okay. So validating responses that they share, I'm really proud of you today for affirming. I can really see where that decision came from. I can really tell that this return to use was a struggle for you. What was the hardest part about that? or what made that so difficult, or what led to some of those decisions. Okay. Reflections. So, wow, I'm can really tell that there's a lot of emotions today, big emotions today. Or, wow, just I'm noticing just a lot of anger today. Is that right? I'm just reflecting back what I'm feeling, or what I'm sensing, or what a patient is giving to me, right? So, when my daughter may, you know, you're the worst dad and I'm a failure. Wow, big emotions today. Tell me what's going on, right? Because when she's feeling, so we do spelling words, right? And when she gets very discouraged that she's struggling with the word, I can't spell, I can't do anything. If I challenge that, then she can feel invalidated, even in her little 8-year-old brain, right? Okay, wow, big emotions today. What's going on? Tell me more about that. What can we do to support? What can we do to strengthen? Okay, meeting in that space. It's not my job as dad to solve. Okay. And then summaries, right? So what I'm hearing you say is that the, Taylor Swift references are getting a little excessive already. You're wrong, but am I hearing that correctly? Right? Just take out the you're wrong part. Because, and again, patients, like, we can hear something, but a patient may not be feeling that. And so, if I'm summarizing, like, okay, so what I'm hearing is, your ex-boyfriend, when you're with your ex-boyfriend, you feel small. Well, no, I don't know that it would be exactly that. Okay, so how would you describe it? Right? That shows that we're kind of working. It's okay to be wrong in those spaces, right? It's okay to not hear something correctly. But that's where the summaries come into play, right? So it isn't that you feel small, it's that you may feel unheard. Okay, cool. Now we're working together. I'm aligning with you. I'm showing up in the space and working with what you're giving me. Okay. This is what I'm hearing. So here are the ways in which we hear. Okay. We hear with our eyes. Okay. That sounds counterintuitive, but yeah, we hear with our eyes. So making good eye contact. Okay. It's why when I do these sessions, um, these lectures, like, me looking at the little green dot that I actually see helps you engage with the material, right? Imagine if I did the lecture, but all I was doing was looking at the screen. Well, like, you wouldn't really feel like I'm in this with you, right? Because this is a very different thing than me looking here, right? Because you're looking at the screen. And so now I'm here engaging with you. I do this in my telehealth sessions. And that's kind of a struggle because I want to be able to look at the patient, obviously, so I can see what they're doing. But they want, like, I'm focused on what they are experiencing. And if I'm doing this, then there's more of a connection there. Okay. So we listen with our eyes through eye contact. So I'm talking about telehealth, but, like, even when I'm in person, eye contact is so huge because that shows that I'm in session with you. I'm connecting with you in this space. And it also gives the indication that I'm listening, right? But we also can notice nonverbals, right? So, um, a patient, I can notice when I've entered into spaces where patients get uncomfortable, because when we get uncomfortable, we tend to make ourselves small, right? So you may have read the book or heard of the book called The Body Keeps the Score. If you haven't read it yet, I almost say that that's mandatory reading if you want to do this work. But our body can sometimes give us away, right? So people who are, like, feeling very nervous about something or very closed off, maybe they're cold, but very closed off, have a tendency to try to make themselves small, right? Or they want to lean away to try to get away. It's like a natural reaction to try to get away from the thing that's making us uncomfortable. So when I get to something that makes somebody a little bit they have a tendency to kind of close themselves off to make themselves small. And I can notice that. And I'll even call that out, like, wow, I've noticed you're having a reaction to what we're talking about. How's everything going? And doing just kind of a check-in. But if you're noticing, like, one of the good things for, like, okay, this is going well, is do they mirror your body language? Um, If I'm crossing my legs, is somebody crossing their legs, right? If I reach for my drink, do then they reach for their drink? If I notice those things, I can pick up that, yeah, we tend to mirror people that we trust. Tend to, not saying that's all the time, but when I'm in a session where that's the case, body language wise, people tend to do that. Okay. We listen with our ears, which duh, but there's also more that goes into it. What words did someone choose? What words did they not choose? What words did they say versus what was left unsaid? And then what tone or inflection did they have, right? And that can tell us a lot. So how are you doing today? I'm doing okay. I want to believe you. Or how are you doing today? Oh, I'm just great. Right? That tells us a lot, right? Tone, inflection, how they choose to use words. Are they censoring themselves? Why? Exploring some of that. Like all of those are very, very important. Okay. We also want to listen with our heart, right? Empathize with the patient. Make sure that you are taking the time to try to see the world through their eyes. Empathy is a huge part of what we do. And then also, again, as I mentioned before, that unconditional positive regard. Accepting them wholly and fully as they are without judgment is so crucial. Okay. And then also making sure that your space is free of distraction. Okay. As much as possible. I will choose to put my phone away, right? As much as I can. Sometimes even turning it on do not disturb, because even if it's obviously sitting it face up, tend to be distracted. Even if you sit it face down, it's almost this subtle indication of this is present and I will be distracted by this phone. So I'm going to sit it face down. Because like if we get, because this thing buzzes, it's going to buzz. And patients can sometimes get the indication that what's on there is more important than what you've got going on. One of the other things that if you work in an office setting, Microsoft Teams will all the time. And I have to turn that off because that can be distracting. Okay. So trying to find as many distractions as you can minimize so that you can have a like a very neutral, free of distraction space. Okay. And then it also shows that their words matter, right? And if you are not distracted and they are not distracted, it's a kind of a sterile environment, but you're also able to tune in with really what they're saying. Okay. So those are the different ways in which we listen. We need to make sure that we're reflecting on our own stuff before entering in the clinical space with someone else. If you are going through your own stuff and you bring that into the clinical space, it can serve to really infect what you're doing. Okay. There's transference and countertransference. Those are things that we really need to be aware of, because so transference is when the patient sees us in a particular role and treats us as such. Okay. So if so I'm 40 and I can, obviously I have patients that come into my office that are like half my age. And so if they're working through like father stuff, I'm old enough to be their dad. That makes me want to vomit. But like they could see me as a father figure and confuse some of those roles. Let's say their dad wasn't there. Let's say that they've had a poor relationship with their father. They can see me as a fatherly figure. Okay. But if I challenge them in some ways, they may experience rejection. Part of our job as therapists is to challenge, right? Challenge thoughts, whatever. And so they can hear that as criticism or rejection. So that's that transference. We have to be very aware of that. Because if I'm just gently challenging something and they see that as rejection, their initial thing is to kind of pull away. right? That's transference. Now, countertransference is the other way. That's us working on our stuff through the patient. So let's say that you are someone who is the child of someone with addiction, struggling with addiction. And either that addiction led to a parent passing away, a parent kind of abandoning the abandoning you during childhood, blah, 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 blah. And you meet with someone who is a parent that is actively using. If you have not resolved that internal conflict inside of you, you could end up judging that patient because of what they're doing. Okay. So that could lead to, if they present in the space and say, yeah, I had my kids, we were playing and I just had a reoccurrence of use, and now I'm right back in it. Like you could get otherwise emotionally compromised, and that infects kind of what you're doing. Okay. I hope that makes sense. If you have questions about that or want more explanation, send me an email and we can talk about it. So it's important. Okay. It's important that you check yourself before you wreck yourself in that space. Okay. Our word choices oftentimes reveal an underlying assumption of the belief we hold or belief that we hold. It may not be intentionally malicious, but it could be stigmatizing. Okay. So again, language matters. So when we're talking about mental health, rather than saying like, she is or are, she's bipolar, or that's one of my bipolars, right? They struggle with, or they have bipolar, right? Rather than say that they had we have normal behaviors, instead of we say usual or typical behaviors, right? And there's no such thing as normal, right? We know this, okay? Drives me crazy. No, it just annoys me. This irritates me, which is fine, right? Oh, I'm so OCD. I hear that a lot. Like, oh my God, I'm so OCD. No, you just kind of like order, right? Because OCD tends to have a negative connotation. Okay. Even in recovery, right? So, non-judgmental language. We want to make sure we're removing some of that stigmatizing language. Changing our verbiage is important to changing views. And it's as much as a community challenge as a personal one, right? So like, we don't want to say they relapsed, right? They had a setback or had a reoccurrence of use. Okay. Stayed clean, maintained their recovery. Are you staying clean? No. Are you maintaining your recovery? Because when when we have someone that presents, they do a drug screen, we don't want to say dirty drug screen, right? It was positive for the presence of something, whatever it was, because clean, dirty has a connotation, a negative one at that. And it also makes an implication on the person. This was a dirty drug screen. No, it was presence for the positive of this other stuff, because that's all that it is. These are just chemicals, right? We got to get out of some of this stigmatizing language, even within the community. Okay. So in general, person struggling with addiction, in this case, I'm using the language presented here, not words that I would use, but language presented here. An addict can call another person an addict at an aid meeting, usually not in public, but alcoholic, mutual aid meetings, alcoholic to alcoholic, that's generally okay. But there are others where it's just not, like it's just not okay. And here are ways in which it is okay. Okay. So our language matters. All of these things matter because they underlie what we feel and what we truly believe. There is something for self-disclosure. Now, peer supports, the rules for you are just a little bit like wider, or those of you in recovery, a little bit wider, but they still apply. Use self-disclosure sparingly, okay? If you're using self-disclosure, have it be with a purpose, okay? Make sure that it is relevant to the topic that you're talking about, but you have to protect your boundaries, okay? If they're talking about, like, I got really overwhelmed because I just got this new job and I got overwhelmed, and so I drank. Okay. And you have a similar experience, that's cool. Like, you can talk about that. That would be fair game. But leave it in that space and allow it to be used to springboard into another part of treatment, right? What you don't want is to talk about your experience and then lead it to you talking more about yourself, right? So yeah, I mean, I've been there before. It was really, really hard. And you know, for me, like, one of the things that was most beneficial was to blah, blah, blah. What do you think could be beneficial to you in this space? Perfect, right? You're connecting. This happened to me. This is what I did. What do you think would work best for you? Not, I did this, so now you need to go do this. One of the things that worked really well for me was to get back into my recovery. I did 90 for 90. That was great. What do you think you could do here to get back on track? Perfect. That's a perfect use of self-disclosure. You opened up. This is what happened to me. This is what I did. What do you think you should do? That's excellent. Okay. Not saying this is what you need to do, right? This is what I did. What do you think would work? Okay. But you got to protect your boundaries. Make sure that you protect your boundaries. Okay. The goal of rapport building is to establish trust, build alliance, and work alongside, not to judge. Okay. The therapeutic alliance that we have with our patient, client, consumer allows a space for change and growth. And if they perceive us as being judgmental, it can destroy our ability to aid with healing and actually prevent them from accessing recovery, which is the last thing that we want. Our goal is to guide treatment. We are guiding them towards a direction, not prescribing them treatment. Okay? Have a wonderful Labor Day. Have a wonderful week. I will see you next week. As always, Canadian geese are definitive proof that evil exists. Live mahalo. I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.